started.
Okay. So I will try to recap like what we discussed in morning.
Yeah.
How do you share complete window? Like it's right now
Uh,
showing.
we do share and then share desktop.
Is it in the okay desktop? It is this one, right?
Yeah. But be careful with this because any ping or mail would come. So quit Slack and
No, no. Nobody disturbs me actually. Okay, so we can get rid of
That's
it.
actually too many tabs.
Yep.
I,
So you can see this Chrome window diagram I have.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and let's get rid of this one also. This one also. Yep, yep, good. So like in morning we saw like what are the various parts of Sandbox, like you have an editor and you have a common channel, and then you can also have a preview and console. So editor jobs is mainly about like enabling user to add a file, delete or edit files. And like whenever user make any change, it emits the changes. And what preview does it listens to the channel, and like whenever like it receive the updates, it again start the like executing the whole system. And like while executing the files, it may have like some logs which it can emit back to the channel, and then console can listens to them.
Mhm.
Okay, and like preview also does like pre-processing part. uh, I guess this we didn't cover in morning. And it can be like let's say you have a markdown file or JSON file or SVG, and you want to import it. Normally, like how does we import in our application? Like Webpack helps us like it resolves the file and create gives you an URL in the import, right?
Yep.
So in same way, like preprocessor can also work depending on what they want to do. And like and pre-processing actually happens in the worker. So this transpilation is also part of pre-processing.
Mhm.
So the moment preview gets the update, it takes the main file entry file you have, and then start creating the modules out of it. And it start with the main file, it parse it. While parsing it, hand over the job of parsing to the worker thread. It extract the metadata and at the same time transpile it.
So
So yes,
all the work are happening on the preview window. It's not happening, and actually it makes sense because if you haven't enabled preview window, why to
yep.
do those passing?
Yep. So basically, what happens is like editor or console, or you may also have server console like in Sandbox. So those are just for the like showing it to the user. In actual, like nothing runs over there, right?
Mhm.
You in editor you may have like formatting also, so that can be one part of like one thing on the editor side.
Okay.
Formatting, or you can say you show like some hints or lints on the editor side.
Mhm.
So those can live in the editor side. It depends like who listens to the file changes, and then they can take the action accordingly.
Yeah, got it.
So it like preview has a executor. So this is the guy like who controls everything. Try to mock the ES model structure, and like it does bunch of tasks like building the dependency graph. It resolves the module like whether they are local or the external module. Then it creates the definition the way we saw in morning, like creating that function template and initiate it, then store into the cache so that like it can be referring to the one of the dependency by resolving.
And Kuldeep, like when you like parse these files, I was supposed to ask a question. I forgot that what I was thinking. Please continue. I will probably let you know once I get my question back. I forgot what I was supposed to ask.
Okay, no problem.
But
So
I
let's
think Code Sandbox does this executing part on the server, not.
server. Yeah, they does it on server. So what happened in CodeSandbox? They give you ready-made scripts
Mm.
which you can take and then execute them. So
Uh,
they have a runtime on top of it. It understands the application the way Webpack runtime understand the your dependency graph and everything.
Okay. And it makes sense because if the preview window is shareable, then you have to do it on a server side and do it on a client side.
no, actually, one thing that I found out was like uh, my understanding was like they build the the static modules out of it. Like they transpile things and they serve it as a static files. So when we open the preview window in a separate window as a shareable link, they don't do any kind of transpilation or anything. They just bring down the the build assets and then serve it right away.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's not a hot module, right?
Nope, nope, nope.
Can we just uh, check it like does it work on offline the preview
Yep,
mode?
yep.
Or,
The preview works on offline. And one thing that I noticed in the preview is that, like, if we like inspect into the HTML, they would have added two script tags. One script tag is what, like as Kuldeep explained, that's all the magic behind the scenes. If we try to remove those script tags, the preview window does not work anymore. It doesn't have hot reloading or doesn't bring any files from the server.
Mhm.
So I have Divakar with me, like who gave a talk about Code Sandbox in React Meetup, one of the meetup we hosted here.
Mhm. He's
So
joining.
he's also joining. Yep, he's joining.
Yep. Cool.
Okay, so I was showing you code like how it start. So this is the like main entry point for us. Like these are the files we get. We extract out one of the main file, same time create a register, and then start creating the modules.
Mm.
So what happens here? Like it parses and extracts the meta from it. So we have the meta and the transformed content.
Mm.
Then it add it to the register like meta and the path of the dependency. Then it goes with the like with each dependency, it goes on initiating the dependencies basically. So imports it take and loop over the each dependency, resolve them first, find out like whether a module exists for them or not in that file.
Mm.
And if it doesn't, it throws an error. Let's say somebody has written like import math from dot slash math,
Mm.
and that file doesn't exist, so it throws the error here.
Mm.
And like once this is confirmed, it goes into the cache and figure out whether the already this was initiated or not. And
Mm.
if it is not, then it goes on creating the that module.
And Kuldeep, do we persist this cache in local storage or in kind of any
No, no.
index
So
DB?
this
In memory.
every time you get a new update, it creates a new cache. So
Okay,
this function basically execute every time you send
okay.
new files, right?
So when you like download third-party dependencies like React or something like that, do you cache that? Because like I think every time we
So
try to
right now this code uh, it uses only a single cache, but the one which we built in Mobi that was using two cache. So for external it has a different
okay,
cache, and for local it has a different cache.
okay,
And also for local, we can somehow cache, right? So
yep,
let's say whatever is a focused window, a user will be typing only on that, and that file only will get invalidated.
Yep.
So somehow it
But
can
it
pass.
depends, like it depends on the like what you are changing. So it's very hard to detect whether you have removed one of the import or not. So
Yep. For example, let's say like in server we have 10 files. One problem that I was actually thinking about is, let's say in server we have 10 files. We edited few files, but those files gone did not get reflected in the server, and we updated all the cache in the local storage. So next time when we reload, when we have internet connection, we would get like the stale files, and the cache would be invalid because the files that we got from the server are not same as what we have in the cache.
yeah,
So caching the transpile files are a little tricky, but I think the external dependencies caching would be very okay, because like though they don't change much, we just need to have expire date and version based caching.
But I
that
still
totally makes
didn't get
sense.
why. Sorry for that, but yeah, why the caching? Let's say I'm working on one of the file
Hmm.
on the editor. Only that file would change.
But okay, it depends like what you are changing. Let's say you remove one of the export and that is being used in one of the module.
Okay.
So now in that case, because you are manually handling all the bindings and
Oh, if you are changing the file itself, the file descriptor, then you might have to invalidate everything. But if you are
yep,
changing like a content of a file, then you might not have to.
yep. But
Yep.
detecting that, like whether you have changed or not, so it becomes hard. So you can do it obviously.
Okay, 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 got it.
And syncing those changes with the server also is important, because let's say next time you reload, you have files that are not what you had in the local previously. So those are from server, which are very different, and we have a cache which is very different from what were the files in the
No,
server.
I was talking about memory cache instead of like a local storage.
Okay, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, memory cache should be fine.
Mhm. So coming to like the dependency, again, like this goes into the loop recursion. So taking the one dependency and then create the instance for it. And let's say if that dependency depend on some other module, it again goes into the recursion part. And once it reaches the leaf node, so this is where it start like it will come out of this loop from here and then goes on creating the instance of that module.
Hmm.
So till that point, you have all the imports resolved if there is any. But in like in leaf node, what happens is like you don't have any imports. So generally, this for leaf node, this area is empty.
Hmm. One question
And
on this. This we are running every time we are changing a file. So
mm,
how much like expensive it is? Like if do we um, do anything like debouncing or throttling or something for this, or it's just like it's not that expensive as we think.
uh, it depends like what you want to show on UI. So if you have a loader on UI, while this executes, you can show the loader. So I actually was trying it. So here what happened is like this was like a JS imported into the preview HTML, right?
Hmm.
So while this is running, it shows the loader, like show loader true. And once this is done, it again turn it off.
Okay, so in this thing, like in a code sandbox, those are reflected as while you are typing something.
Yeah. So CodeSandbox do a lot of optimization. So this is very simple implementation.
Oh no, no, no.
So
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
want to get that.
Yeah, it will take time. So you can easily see on UI if I show you. So
Yeah, to add that on to Sudhanshu, like uh, there are like what I understood was like in Code Sandbox, if we change a file, what they do is that they transpile that file and all the files that are importing those files and just evaluate and transpile those files. So since Kuldeep already has a dependency tree, from that we can understand that if a particular file changes, all we just need to transpile and evaluate other files that are using that particular file.
Hmm.
So the expense would be less that side, And I think right now CodeSandbox moved to the React fast refresh. So it is like we need to do a lot of React specific things in the bundler, which whenever there is a change in the file, it is reflected immediately. I think there was a huge
But
comment.
it is supported on parcel as well. But they have implemented a different approach for each of those
Yep.
Mhm.
parcel. They
Yeah.
have different Angular, they have different, and React, they have different, I guess.
Yep. So I
Yeah,
think
so you have to be opinionated in like what you framework are using. Like let's say for Svelte, you might have a different tool to use under the hood.
Mhm.
like I would probably share the comment after maybe in the chat, in which like Dan Abramo talks like a huge page where he says what are the things that React exposes to support React fast, like fast refresh in a particular bundle. So if Webpack wants to support that, it
Can
needs to
you,
implement whole thing.
can you edit on the same doc?
Yes, give me a minute. I will do that. Eh, Ivan tweeted it long back. I will probably take that and share it.
Yes, okay. You can do it later.
Yep, sure.
So coming back to the like creating the instance of module. So what happens here is like you have an array of imports for that particular module and the transformed content.
Mhm.
It iterates over the like every import. It do a like resolution of it like from this source of the import. It create a scope name and then get the dependency.
Mhm.
Then on top of it iterates over like this is like special case in case you have like alias,
Okay.
but otherwise like whatever is there like whatever the import you have that will be available on this scope name. So in dependency what you define is like scope name and the value of the module, the
Mhm.
the one which you get from the cache. So I will show you like what actually goes into the module. And so here if you see we have meta. So this is basically first module index.js we have. This is the first iteration, and it has already transpiled the file, and you have like content like this, the
Mhm.
way I was showing in morning. So
Mhm.
because it doesn't export anything, so return statement is an empty object.
Mhm.
Otherwise, like everything is changed. Like your
Okay.
my library is changed, and the counter is also changed. And in Meta, we have the imports. So imports are nothing but the one which you get from the AST. So it's same as like you have variables. It has variables has like local what you refer in the file plus what was imported actually. So let's say if you use alias, I say like counter as counter is capital C. So it will be like local is counter with the capital C and imported is counter.
Okay. Okay.
The way like if you see this default, so my library is a default import, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
So for that, mm, going back. So for this like imported thing was default, but the way we refer it into the local scope is my library.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this is how
So
we
this is,
differentiate the named export and default exports.
yep.
Okay.
So now this has dependencies. So it will go into the defining the dependencies first before executing the module. So again, now it came. This time it is for the my library file, and it has transpiled. So if you see like there are like bunch of transformation happened.
Mhm.
So I have removed the export statement. So it was like export let counter equal to 10,
Mhm.
and it was converted to the simple let counter equal to 10. And wherever uh, this was the only export and one was the default, so it returns you a counter and a default value.
Mhm.
So Kuldeep,
And
written this transpiler yourself, like Babel plugin yourself, or
Yeah.
okay.
yep, so there is a Babel parser. So I created a plugin which outputs this structure. So what it does, it like it strip out the import from the file and replaces the all the local instance of that with the scope dot the whatever is the local variable name.
Mhm.
And also like whatever you export from that module, it removes the export statement and then group them into the return statement.
Mhm.
So Kuldeep, so these are mostly like ES6 representations. So we are not caring about ES5. We are going with ES6
So const and this thing are now supported.
across
So
most of the browsers. Yep.
yeah, so it's depend on like what you are transpiling.
Mhm.
So it's Babel, like you can put anything and then you can get whatever version you want.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what module you are using? Babel only, or there is any other thing? Uh,
Babel.
System.js uses trace here.
Treasure.
Yeah, by default.
Okay.
So I will show you like how it is happening. But this is what you get from the transform content, what you get.
Hmm. Got it.
And if you see the meta for this, so it has it does, because this is a leaf dependency, so it
Mhm.
doesn't have any import.
Mhm.
And but it has all the information about the export, like how it was referred locally and what you are exposing. So counter was counter and local like default was underscore underscore. Like this is one special name I gave it. So and it was exported as default.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you know like you in while exporting you can do the alias also, export as.
Right.
Hmm.
Yes.
So this structure basically support that, like what you refer locally and what you export. The way we have like while importing also.
Got
Okay.
it.
Makes sense.
And this is not specific to the like this sandbox. Like this is how like
Generic.
AST works also. So in
Yeah.
AST also you get all these things. Like these are
Oh,
basically variables into the export declaration.
yeah, yeah, and it makes sense because if you have to support third-party module,
Yep, yep,
might be getting something similar structure, and
yep,
you will have to support that as well.
yep. So like for this module, as this is the leaf, so it will just add it to the register. It doesn't have any dependency. And now while defining the instance of it, so wanted to show you like what goes in dependencies. So for this module, because this is leaf, it doesn't have anything. Like dependency map is empty.
Mm-hmm.
And same is for the like value while you create the instance of the module. But let's say I put a debugger here. And this comes back. Now this is creating the instance for the index.js.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have imports like two set. We have my library and the counter. So what it does, it iterates over here. So last time we while iterating we created the instance of the my library and saved it to the register. So it just take it out and add it to the like add a scope name
Mm-hmm.
and add it to the like dependency graph. So here, um, so this is how it works. So it creates like whatever you have, those import referred as a local variable, it creates those variables on the scope, like mylib is referred locally.
Mhm.
So on this scope variable, it creates those keys.
Yeah, and
And
these all are
it,
get.
it also, yeah, it also has the like keys from the what module exports actually. So module was exporting counter and default.
Mhm.
So those are from the module itself. So if you use the same name, so you will get you will only get the like counter and default. Let's say here I remove this. Mm, I remove this guy. This is first. This is second. First, first, second. So here, if you see, now that mylib is gone.
Mhm.
Got.
Uh, any questions?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Okay. So now we understand like how like the model which we write and model which actually execute are different. But let's see how that transformation happens. So in the so while creating it in the transform code, what happen is here it send message to a worker, and I have a worker here which listens to the message and it gets that file. Payload is your file, like content of the file. You can ignore this part as of now, this one. So by default, I have ES module transformer. You pass a meta empty object from the starting and the content, what you get from the file and the instance of file to it. And like here is like everything happening, the transformation. You have meta. Initially, it's an empty object, content of your file and file instance. So if you have like know how this Babel plugins work, so they follow the visitor pattern. So any node you want to visit, you just say the like its name and pass a function. It will invoke your function for that particular node.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm. So if I remove this, so in this function, like what is happening, I'm defining a Babel config, and like it uses ES 2017 and React preset and this plugin.
Mhm.
Take the content which file has originally and get the AST.
Mhm.
So once you have AST, it also have like some meta information like I capture the exports or imports from the file while running this plugin, my plugin here.
Mhm.
And from AST, again, I pass it to the Babel to get the code out of it.
Mhm.
So let's see what happened in plugin. So plugin basically do three things here. It removes the import statement,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it captures the information about like what was imported. And let's say you import React from some module, and wherever that React variable was used, it replaces it with the scope name dot React, the way we saw the file, right? So this is a function like I pass it to the, I pass the path node to it. It gives me like what was the import declaration, then create a canonical path, iterate over the various variables. Like if it was imported as star, so it will use the local name. Like here I'm renaming the module variable basically. So it knows like this was the like local was, you can think of it was React, and let's say I want to replace it with the scope dot React. So here I'm passing it like if it is a star, so I won't do it in this way. So it will be like React and then scope itself. But let's say it was something like React dot no, it was like something exported from the React and use state. So it will be converted to scope dot use state.
Okay.
And like it capture this information into an array and remove the node from the ST.
Mm-mm.
So like after the iteration, what we have is like this array is filled with the like local and the imported value, what you have in the module. Same way it does for the exports also. So there are like two kind of exports. Actually, there are three kind of export statements. So there can be default declaration you can have named, or there was one more also like star annotation.
Export a star from you can export something from a different file.
Yep.
So it just
So I didn't write code for that, but you can like add your like function here, then look for specific declaration, then play around with it.
okay.
So let's say what happened with the named export. What it does it like, again, I have a function where I pass the node and it gives me the like what was exported, and it alters the node. So I will show you like what happens. There is AST. Oh, so let's talk about this one only. So this is the named export. So in AST, what you get is you get this node, like the function which I've written in the Babel plugin. So what it does it remove the export part from it and convert it to something like cost x equal to 10. But this like has to be done by the nodes. So in named export, you have declaration, and declaration can be like variable declaration, or it can be your function declaration also. So in this case, this is a variable declaration. So essentially what it does is like whatever the declaration was there, use that node to replace this node.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
So this is what is happening here. If you see this function, so it checks for the declaration first, okay, whether that was a function declaration or a normal declaration. So it takes the declaration and return that node.
Yeah, got it.
Is it confusing?
No,
I know it
No,
is.
no.
It makes sense.
Okay. And like same one I do for the like function declaration also. So if you have something like export function, do something, it will convert it to the function. So it will return this node. So, and like this is what happened for the named export. For default, again, same thing it does. It takes the node, like after the node which you have after removing the export keyword. And in the case of default, I assign a default, like because default, if you keep it same, so what will happen is like in browser it will fail because it will assume this is a ES module and default is a keyword there.
Okay. Okay.
So I rename it with something else. Like you can use any namespace you want to. Like I keep it like _default, and then capture that information like in export, like what was exported, what was it, like how it was referred locally and how it was exported. So in export, essentially you have something like local, it was, let's say, default of exported. It was like default. Make sense?
Yep.
So once this transformation happens, like after it you get a AST. And this is like the change one, like after you have extracted out the all the imports, exports, and replace the variables in the module. Then this worker send the like a transpile that AST and then give you a code from it. And here what I do is like whatever was the exports I had, I just create a return statement from them. So if you had something like export const x equal to 10, so it will be converted into something.
I confused with this thing. What happens when you export anonymous function?
Anonymous function. So see, in case of name export, you can't do that because what will happen is like, even though you are declaring a anonymous function, but it has a declaration part before it. Let's say if you type const myfn equals to this one.
Got it. Throw error.
So in this case, what you are exporting is myfn. So it's a named export. But let's say you do default export. So in case of default, you can do that actually. So
you can't do with a named export.
Yeah.
But the way I play with the default export is like I remove it, this thing, and keep it at like turn it to like underscore default
Okay.
equal to. So it's no more anonymous function for me.
Okay.
Makes sense. So, Kuldeep, one question. Like,
Uh-huh.
so when you did this export thing and then it made const x equals to 10, return an object x. Now, when do you wrap it inside a function? Like, there should be in a function, right? Because you are using like.
Okay, so this becomes the, okay, you remember like morning discussion we had, const fn equals to new function and you pass the dependencies here. And last one is the like body of that function. So
The body.
your body is essentially this part.
Got it.
Const and the return part. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay, it's confusing, right?
No,
This part is clear.
No, actually, I took like lot of time like while understanding like what is actually happening, what I have created.
No, the problem with this is like there are a lot of different with NEST. There are a lot of different use cases, and covering all the use cases like that is a bigger part.
Yeah, so I haven't explained you like what is happening here, like why it is happening, why I'm doing it in this way. So this is part of AST itself.
Yeah.
So I could have like directly used the like whatever the local name. So actually I was trying to mimic the ES module, and in ES module,
One question: when we import React from React, so you use the UMD bundle or the common JS bundle?
I will come to it. Like that is a external dependency. We haven't covered that part. But so while mimicking the ES module, so one of the key difference between the ES module and the common JS is like live bindings, the way I show in morning.
Hmm.
So if you have something in module and we export it, and that thing itself change, it should be reflected to all modules instead of the like the previous value.
Mhm.
So this part basically cover that. So if I directly use the like whatever the local value here, like instead of passing it like this, I could have done it like keep it at local.
Yeah, but it will be
So
a fail.
in this case, I will be passing a copy of the what was the exported from the module. So I just create a context and then hold the values in it and pass that context to the module which is importing it. So coming back here, so here also like what is happening is just to cover up. So this like okay, so once the module definition, like we have module instance. Module instance is nothing but you had a function definition, right? Which you created using the function constructor. So if you execute this function, you get an instance. Remember the return statement we put there, right?
Mhm.
Yep, yep.
So this instance is nothing but that whatever you return from that function.
Okay, okay.
So what I do is like I keep it into the cache and like in update the like whatever the module cache we had and name it as exports. Then later or in like while iterating over the dependencies, I extract it out from the cache and then create a like empty, you can say a object which inherits from the exports and then use it here.
Mhm.
And if you have some alias, so for alias, what happen is like uh, instead of like because now you have alias and those variables which you are referring in the current module are not exported from the dependency. So I have to like manually cherry pick them and then create them on the whatever the scope variable I was passing.
Can you explain this part again?
Okay, so let's say we have something like import A from A as B from my library.
Mhm.
So this module dependence, this module is nothing but like this thing is the
Oh,
instance of module, right?
Yep.
yeah.
But this doesn't have B.
Mhm. You have to call them.
And and normally like how do we refer the module instance is like scope name, like any export from it, it should be A. It will be like scope name and A. But in the code, it is not A, it is referred as like
Yeah, got it. Got it.
scope dot B.
Got it. So here you are just whatever as B thing is there, you are just adding it on the same object. So
Mhm.
you can use that scope variable with that property name.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
got it. Got it.
So again, like once you have the all the dependencies, it create the definition, then execute the module instance, and then save it into the cache.
Mm.
Okay. Okay.
So I think like I have covered. Okay, so about the external part, right? So this, let me show you a demo of it, like how it works. Let's say we import, but shit, where is debugger? Let's say we import some module which is not locally defined. So by locally, what I mean is like you have a file of that module. So we import React from React, and let's say I write a function and return const code equal to I think React also we need to import. Come on, come on, man. Not sure what happened. Okay, it's there now. So you see, like it's executing, it's getting the dependency, and like shows the output.
Kuldeep, that like you are doing document.get element by id root. So there in the file, are you specifying that render this
Yeah.
HTML?
So I show you this morning. Like this is the like
Okay.
iframe template we have. So I created like root here. Like you can show the error also here or loading here.
It is not like there is a index.html file which user can create and you render that file. It is like this
No,
part is fixed.
no.
Right.
I think like for that we can probably write a loader in which, like for example, let's say you have your own template of index. We might say if you enter HTML while loading, just replace the content of the preview windows body with the body of what you gave. It might suffice our use case. If we prefer to have a different index.html for every different frameworks or libraries.
Yeah, like it can be one of the local module, and then you just treat it spatially, and then whatever the content is there, you append it to the DOM.
Got
So coming to the like how these are getting resolved. So there is a so here we have a check for dependency, whether it is a local module or it is a external module. It's just like if it start with the dot, it's a local module. Otherwise, it's a external module. So I have a function here. So just again, like this is a function definition, and this is like module declaration. And what I use is like I use this jsp.io. So you know this you have unpackage.com, which is a CDN over the
Yep.
npm registry. So
Yep.
this kind of work in same fashion, but it unpackage gives you the content of the file, but this CDN gives you the instance of the module.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So once you have the module, what I do is like I take it and then create an entry for the cache, basically the way we were creating for the local modules. So it has export, it has chronicle path, and then like
And
this is specific to the way this JSP and .io works.
JSPM.io, does it have all the dependencies of npm? Because a lot of time for some of dependencies they don't provide uh, the the UMD files. Instead, they define like a. Let's take an example of Lodas. In Lodas, you can also do something like Lodas slash array, Lodas slash from, something like that, right?
Yep.
So such kind of thing can't be resolved from that particular method, right?
Let's try this editor. See what happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I will show you. So you're saying import
Import.
underscore form.
This would work, but
What? Sorry.
if you say like a Lodas slash something,
Yeah, that one. Or like depends whether they support it or not. So
okay. So yeah, it completely depends on the JSPM if they.
yep, the way they support it.
Okay. Okay.
So you can use block is array and then say some array pass here in console. You should get true.
And what? And once try like named import, like import curly bracket is array from Lodash. See if it works.
Okay, so this again it's come to us like how we implement it. So let's say I import React, right, and I use state. So this should be defined, right? So it is.
Hmm.
So this is something not the JSPM.io does, but it is the like the way we are iterating over the modules, the way we are storing it into the cache.
Somehow I feel like if any module support this UMD bundle, then it will work. But uh, for such kind of thing, like if you are writing Lodas slash Lodas, that
Mhm.
Lodas slash is array, it might not work on such cases.
We can try it. Let's see.
And I think in CodeSandbox, the resolver that they are using, the package resolver,
Yeah,
they
they
also had the same problem. Like if we go for a path, how do we like build the package? So I think the solution that
It
they
is
came
there.
up with was like they can manually come up with some for some popular packages like these paths that can be allowed in while building the package in their server. I think.
But guys, this worked.
Yep.
So they do support it.
JSPM for the win.
Yep.
yes.
Yep. So like while creating the sandbox, I first tried with the system.js, and I was like reading about the this import maps and all. Then I followed up the like guy who created the system.js and asked him like, is there any module which I like any API publicly available which can I use for like importing the modules? So he only shared this URL with me.
Who?
Okay.
The what is it? The code
I
sandbox.
don't know the yeah the like guy who is working on Lodash. sorry, this require system.js.
Oh, okay.
It's same. I guess it is the same guy. JSPM dot.
Okay. It should the name itself is a Indian, so JSPM. Got so that's why it might be working like there might be whatever the thing is on npm
Yep,
to
that
yeah.
works. And
So
funny thing is like it do supports like various uh, you can say versions of it. So you can pass the version also, like package name at the rate version if you want to refer to the specific version.
And
mhm.
Kuldeep, you are not using dev.jspm.io, you are using unsafe production.jspm.
Yep.
What
Yep.
was the reason for that?
I was reading this blog itself and like they mentioned to use the production one. So that's why I use it. So you can use dev also. It's up to you. Like for production, they do refer to use the production, but I don't know like why they named it unsafe.
Production is always unsafe.
Yeah. Maybe like it's because they don't want many people to use it. So it's a warning for the people.
So, hmm.
Cool.
Okay. So coming to the like to support the various different type of formats. So let's say we want to support JSON format. So I create a file and say 10. And if I import it,
The
sorry,
JSON is not valid. Counter will be double quotes.
I
oh,
think
it's JavaScript.
yeah means here
अच्छा
it will be able to talk
अच्छा अच्छा
but
अच्छा
Yeah.
Yeah, this is okay here.
Mm. So here it will be like state from,
yeah,
and
that's
if
all
I
in
do
JSON. So got it.
so, we have counter.
mhm.
Cool.
So I can show you the, oh, where is that? The one we have created that also supports the like markdown, SVG and all.
What all format you support. So in a way you have written your own version of webpack.
Yeah, it understand the you can say module dependency and also resolve them. So like this is the one we have. I will minimize it. Let's say we have readme and it says hello and I refer it here. Sudhanshu, you have to cut this part.
Okay.
So see, it is okay. And not only this,
So
it
mark.
also styles also. So let's say you do uh, body, sorry, red. I hope that is correct. And you do import space.css. Yeah. And also SVG also, like if you have some SVG, you can import it. Let me pick some SVG.
So you might have written all the loaders type of thing.
Yep. So I will show you like how it is working in like the current one which I was showing you. So here also.
You can close that tab so later on we don't have to cut that.
Yep. So in worker, I told you to skip this part, right?
Yep.
So essentially what is happening here, it picks the extension of the file and then I have already defined like specific transformer for the extension. So if you go and check this, like for the JSON, I did it. So I have JSON transformer, and in this, what it does it like again like the way we had the AS module transformer, it has meta, then content, and the file itself. Here I'm just playing around the template, and what I do is like whatever the JSON you are getting from the file, just export it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then it goes into the transformation chain. Like this is ES module, and next transformer will be AS module transformer. So again, it will convert it to the something like the way we were seeing. So same way you can play around, like you can create the transformer for the MD or the CSS, like anything you want for SVG.
CSS, you might be doing like a add a style tag.
Yep. Load the.
So whatever the content of that file is, I just create a script link style tag, and then append it to the body. And while like once I get the new update, I clean up it. So in here, I was cleaning up like bunch of things. The previous error which was shown on screen, or the loading, removing the loading and all. So,
Yep.
So anything else, like any questions?
No, things make sense till now.
Yep. There are a lot of nuances. Lot.
Lot of
So okay,
nuances, like small things.
yeah, there are a lot of small things. So if you see the like whole thing, the core of it is like the how you maintain the dependencies, like resolve the ES modules, and second part is the like the transformation part, like where you like extract out various information from the file content and then pass it to the module system.
Yep.
you guys are you folks are planning to open source this thing?
So this is okay. So this thing is like already known in movie part.
Okay.
So I created it over the weekend, and like the original one is like in our repo. So this doesn't have anything specific to his movie. And one more, like the way like Aditya was asking, like let's say you have a fixed dependencies, right? And you want to play around with those. So what you can do is while like creating the instance of it, you can pass those dependency here, and then basically you can control the dependency list here, and then let people play with it.
And filter, and if they add a dependency of their own, we just like show them error, like we don't support it.
Yeah, so it's up to you how you resolve those. Like if you know, like because once you have the dependency list, you can say like, oh, this is not something we know, so throw in an error. And also one use case we had is like resolving the private module. So the demo which I showed you in that, it also refers to the one of the like component library we had.
Right.
And initially the output which you were seeing is like it was from the component library, the icon.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can inject like play around with like which dependency you want and like how your fetches it.
Cool.
So can you open source this repository, if it is not anything internal?
Yeah, so I still have to shape it because like just to give you an overview, it took a lot of time. So a lot of like modularization has to come in and documentation also. So it will be part of like a movie repo.
Yeah. Other question: how much time it took to build this?
Like in real, like initially we had a very simple version. Actually, I got inspired from this React Live. If you have used it,
React Lite.
Live, Live.
Live.
React Live.
I
Yep.
have-
So what React Live does it? So it helps you like we had a documentation part of the component library where we are using React Live, and you pass a bunch of predefined dependency, and then
Like,
in code it automatically resolves those, and then you can use it.
okay.
Like
So I
it
got inspired from that, and like this function idea is from there also.
We
So
use
internally they use same approach: new function, create a definition of function, then have dependency, then inject it.
Yep.
And coming to the like how much time it,
have you seen demo board?
yeah,
There is
demo board is same approach it takes.
okay. It's similar to how you have built.
Yep, quite similar.
They also use JSPM.
No,
Okay.
I'm not sure like how they resolve, but uh, they do have like same way, like they have a CDN which gives you a module instance.
Okay.
So in JSPM also, like I debug it, and the way they do it, like uh, whatever you publish to the npm, so they will transform that code into something
Mhm.
which is like the way I was transforming the code. And then on top of that code, they have a runtime, which like let's say you have React, so React itself can be dependent on various modules internally.
Mhm.
Let's say Lodash or something. So user will be like just importing the React, so it has to resolve the internal dependencies itself and then give you a module ultimately.
And this all things have been taken care from JSPM.
Yep.
Similarly, uh,
So from JSVM, you will get a single module output.
okay. So
So
you
if
will get a single module output, and then again you have to traverse inside all the file
we
to.
don't have to, because we don't bother
Okay.
about
It
okay
gives you.
what React depends on.
Uh, got it. Got it. It will
Yeah.
give.
Actually, I had the same problem when I used unpackage with React DOM. So React DOM internally used the dependency of React to check whether it was loaded or not.
So from unpackage, you will get the common JS package,
No, no, I
and then
was using the UMD package of React DOM, and it was
okay,
requiring React again. So I had some problem with that place. So I think, as you said, the JSPM is very good if it doesn't care about that. It gives a module directly.
yep. So here also what like if you see this create module, like this is the like entry point for it, right? So if you wrap all the code, in a CDN, and then from here you return the instance, so it will be same thing as JSPM.
Okay, okay. Yep. It would be like doing the entire thing that we did on a local module on a like unpackaged module, but we need to also download other files that it depends.
Yep, yep.
Cool.
So would you like to talk about like what uh, challenges you guys are facing? Because this is like our approach, the way I thought, like how we can execute the modules and control every part. But you guys must have followed some approach and faced some issues.
We haven't started yet. Aditya tried that system.js thing with the tracer. What you
Yeah,
call
I tried with Tracer and Babel as well. So Babel, I got this issue like select.
it? Yeah. Can you stop sharing?
Yep,
Uh,
I can.
can you stop sharing? So
Yes, yes.
Basically, the issue I got is that this thing was working, React.useState was working, but
Mhm.
if I do
just use this.
useState and take it from here, then it was not working.
Yeah, I think for this we have to write our own.
Like, yeah, you have to manage the imports.
Even this thing, React Live, we face this issue.
Yeah.
in React life also is the same issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is like in React Live, you can't pass the import statements. So it has to be like one function,
Oh,
and that's okay. So just Aditya, can you open the React Live documentation? So it will show you.
Yeah,
So
there.
here it's referring to React as a global.
mhm.
So you have to
So
pass it.
no, nowhere you import the React itself. So if you put import statement, it will break.
Got it. Similar issue with React Playground.
Yeah,
We have
playground also we have
to
to
provide
pass.
everything as a scope variable and like
Mhm.
Yep.
okay.
But that can be useful in your case because you want to limit the like dependency, right?
Yeah, this can be a way we can do like we say that these are the global dependencies you have.
Mhm.
Just
Yep.
use it as a global variable.
Mhm.
Yep.
Hmm.
And coming to the like console part of Sandbox, so what happens is like now you understand like you can mock the global variables, right, while executing it. So you can pass console object, a proxy object as one of the dependency into the
I got
function definition, and then whatever like use in user land, like whatever is a pass to the console function, you'll get that, and then you can pass it to the console renderer.
Can you stop
Mhm.
sharing? Yeah, I got it. How it can work. Um, nice. Um, so, but then again, you have to write your logger, which can log.
Yeah, so you have to pass one proxy logger, which basically listens to the broadcast channel and then publish the whatever the logs you are getting to the console
Uh,
component.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
There, there's the logger part. CodeSandbox have even this thing running the test local.
Yeah. For that, I actually saw a project yesterday on GitHub called Just Light.
Yeah, I tried it. It's a good.
It works.
Yeah, it works.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
You
it's
tried
quite
it?
nice.
Hmm.
And okay, the way I was using the Babel in worker thread, so it was there is a module called Babel standalone, so you can just import it over the internet and then start using it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So instead of like referring the Babel from the your like you can skip the compilation part of that module and then directly use it.
Okay.
And I was like for Markdown also I was using that Markdown recast is something there like
That
remark.
converted to HTML.
So
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 I have
for
few.
Markdown, what we were doing is like you have Markdown content from it. We were getting the AST, which is like representation of various nodes of Markdown, and from that we had a Markdown renderer, a very like small version of it, like hardly 60 lines.
Hmm.
For using that render, we were creating an EF module with the AST and then passing it to the chain.
So that part, the AST part, you used which utility?
Sorry, come again.
For the AST part, converting it on AST, you're using some third-party library, and then
What was that? Markdown?
Markdown remark.
Markdown remark it was. So you pass Markdown to it, it give you AST.
I think there must be some module which can give you directly HTML from the Markdown. So you pass the
Yeah.
Markdown.
So you can get HTML also, but like we wanted to control the like various elements into Markdown itself.
So
So let's say instead of using the anchor, you are using like our own component which act as a link.
Oh,
okay, okay.
So that was the
Okay.
case. Or okay, let me show you. Okay, I can't show you. So what was happening? Like our whole documentation is powered in same way. We have markdown file. From it, we extract out the EST and then use our own components to show it on the page. So let's say you put a image in the markdown. So if you directly convert it to the HTML, you will get a image tag, right? But you can replace it with the something like image with caption.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and even you can do something like that, like in the documentation site, if you have a something playground type of like a, so in a markdown you put a like a JS format, so you might want to convert it on with some highlighters.
Yeah, so we are also doing it. So like we are playing around the in Markdown. If you place any URL which belongs to the Twitter status, so automatically it will convert to the Twitter card.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I can show you. You can cut it.
Yeah.
It will be a
Yeah.
task for Sudhanshu.
Sudhanshu can't run through and cut everything.
Yeah. So if you see the source of this, it's just a URL in the code.
No,
Sudhanshu,
actually, we are not
So,
seeing anything.
and then we'll
oh,
Yeah, actually, I will do that.
so nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I didn't share my screen.
Just a minute, I will just.